The ancient ruins stood silent in the cold night. The broken stones were covered in strange glowing symbols, as if whispering secrets from a forgotten age. A human explorer named Daniel stood at the center of the ruins, his hands brushing the dusty surface of an old mechanism. It looked like a giant circle carved into the floor, filled with markings no human had ever seen before. Daniel's eyes shone with curiosity, but his body was tense. He knew he was not alone. High above him on a broken stairway stood an alien girl, her silver eyes gleaming in the pale light. She was tall, graceful, and carried herself with an air of superiority. Her name was Zira, and she had been watching him since he entered the temple. With a mocking smile, she crossed her arms and laughed softly, her voice sharp like a blade. "You humans are amusing," she said. "You stumble into places you do not understand, thinking you can solve mysteries even my people fear." Daniel ignored her words, his fingers tracing the edges of the mechanism. He studied the cracks and the faint lines glowing across the stone. His mind worked carefully, noticing patterns where others saw chaos. But Zira kept laughing, her voice echoing through the chamber like cruel music. "Do you think you can activate it?" she mocked. "Generations of my kind have failed. Even the wisest of our scholars could not control this machine." Her words were meant to crush his spirit, but Daniel stayed calm. He knew she wanted him to fail. She wanted to see him humiliated. Still, he refused to give her the satisfaction. He whispered to himself, "Every puzzle has a solution," and bent lower to examine the carvings. The air grew colder as he touched one of the glowing symbols, and the circle hummed faintly under his hand. Zira's eyes narrowed, though her smile remained. "Careful, human," she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "The last one who touched it was burned alive. His screams still echo in these halls." Her words should have made him step back, but instead Daniel pressed forward. His heart beat faster, not from fear, but from the thrill of discovery. He was not a warrior, not a king, but here in this forgotten ruin, knowledge was his weapon. The alien girl tilted her head, watching him with a mix of annoyance and curiosity. Why did this fragile creature not tremble at her warnings? Why did he not break under her mockery? She leaned closer, her silver hair falling across her face, and whispered, "You cannot succeed, human. You are wasting your time." But Daniel only smiled faintly, his eyes fixed on the shifting light beneath his hands. Minutes passed like hours, the silence broken only by the soft hum of the mechanism. Daniel studied the runes, arranging them in his mind like pieces of a puzzle. He remembered old stories of human explorers who were laughed at before they made history. Maybe he, too, would be laughed at. Maybe he, too, would fail. But something deep inside told him this was not the end. It was only the beginning. Suddenly, the ground beneath him trembled, dust falling from the cracked ceiling. The runes glowed brighter, pulsing like a heartbeat. Zira's mocking smile froze, her eyes widening in disbelief. She stepped back, her voice sharp and angry. "Impossible. This should not be happening." But Daniel did not move. He pressed his hand firmly on the central symbol. A loud hum filled the chamber, followed by a deep grinding sound as ancient gears came to life. The circle of stone shifted, its pieces sliding into new positions with a thunderous echo. The air grew heavy, charged with energy. Zira's laughter died in her throat, replaced by silence. Her silver eyes fixed on the human who had done what her kind never could. Daniel stood tall now, his hand still glowing with the strange light of the mechanism. He looked up at Zira, his voice calm and steady. "You mock because you fear what? You do not understand," he said. "But I will not stop until I find the truth." For the first time, Zira had no words, her pride shaken, her mocking smile gone. The chamber roared with life, and the ancient mechanism waited for the next move. The night outside was silent, but within the ruins, history had begun to shift. A human mocked and underestimated had awakened something older than her people's empire, and though Zira tried to stand tall, her hands trembled slightly. She whispered to herself, so softly Daniel could not hear, How is this possible? The air grew colder still, and shadows moved along the temple walls. The human had taken the first step, and the alien girl's arrogance had begun to crack. What would happen next was unknown. But one truth was clear. The mocking stranger had just witnessed the beginning of something that could change both their worlds forever. Asterisk. The chamber was no longer silent. The ancient mechanism pulsed with light, filling the air with a low hum like a heartbeat. Shadows danced across the ruined walls as strange symbols shifted and glowed brighter. Daniel stood steady, his hand pressed against the center of the circle, while the alien girl, Zira, stared down at him with wide eyes. Her mocking laughter had vanished, replaced by confusion and unease. For centuries, her people had tried to awaken this place, but none had succeeded. And now, before her very eyes, a human, a fragile outsider, had done what they could not. Her pride burned, her arrogance cracked. But still, she tried to hold her voice firm. "You are playing with fire," she said, though her tone lacked the sharpness it once carried. "This temple belongs to the ancients, beings far greater than you, even greater than us." Daniel lifted his hand from the glowing stone, his eyes fixed on the runes, swirling with new patterns. "What matters is not who it belongs to," he answered calmly. "What matters is why it still waits." His words echoed through the chamber, and Zira felt her chest tighten. No human should speak with such confidence here. No outsider should sound as if he belonged among the legends. Yet somehow his voice carried weight. The walls began to shift, stone panels sliding away to reveal tall columns covered in alien markings. A deep voice, not human and not alien, filled the room. It was a language unknown, but the sound carried meaning beyond words. It was the voice of the ancients, echoing through time. Zira fell silent, her eyes trembling with awe, while Daniel stepped closer, listening. The voice spoke in fragments, a rhythm of warnings and promises. Only the seeker who sees, only the one who endures. The fire is not death. The fire is the path. Daniel's heart pounded. He felt as though the voice was speaking directly to him. Zira, on the other hand, clenched her fists, anger mixing with fear. "This is madness," she whispered. "The ancients destroyed themselves with this power. No one should follow their path." But Daniel was already studying the shifting runes again. He knelt, tracing them with his hands, watching as they moved like rivers of light. Every line seemed to connect. Every pattern seemed to form a larger puzzle, where others saw chaos. He saw order waiting to be uncovered. His mind burned with curiosity, the hunger to understand pushing him forward. Zira stepped closer now, no longer laughing, no longer mocking. Her silver eyes fixed on him, trying to understand why he did not hesitate. "You do not know what you are touching," she said, her voice sharp but softer than before. "You could awaken something that will kill us all." Daniel glanced up at her, a faint smile on his lips. "Or something that will save us," he replied. The air grew colder again, the hum deepened, and the chamber's light shifted to a dark red glow. Symbols appeared on the floor around Daniel, forming a spiral. Zira gasped, her eyes widening. "No! This is the trial of fire," she whispered. Her people spoke of it in hushed tones, a test left behind by the ancients. No alien had ever survived it. The spiral of light grew hotter, and flames suddenly burst from the cracks in the stone. Chamber roared with fire, the heat intense but controlled. Daniel did not move, his eyes fixed on the path ahead. Zira shouted, "Get back, human! The flames will consume you." But Daniel took a step forward, his body bathed in the red glow. The fire licked at his boots, but it did not burn him. The flames shifted around his body, moving like a living creature that recognized him. The alien girl's jaw tightened as she struggled to understand. Why was he not screaming in pain like those before him? Why did the fire treat him as if he belonged? The echoes of the ancients grew louder, their voices like thunder rolling through the chamber. To walk the fire is to walk the path of creation. To fear it is to remain in shadow. Daniel took another step and another, his movements steady, his heart calm. Zira gritted her teeth, her pride crumbling with each moment. This human, whom she had mocked, was proving himself in ways her people had never imagined. The fire blazed brighter, wrapping around him like a crown of light. Daniel stood tall in the center of the spiral, his body untouched by the flames. The chamber fell into silence, the fire dimming slowly until only glowing embers remained on the ground. Zira stared at him, her voice trembling. This is not possible, she said. But Daniel only turned to her, his expression calm. Possible, he said softly, is just a word for things no one has done yet. For the first time Zira had no reply. Her pride, her arrogance, all the mocking words she had thrown at him were gone. In their place was something else, a flicker of respect and a growing fear. The ancients had spoken, and the fire had obeyed. And now, in the heart of their forgotten temple, a human stood where no alien had ever survived. The echoes of the ancients still lingered in the air, whispering warnings of trials yet to come. But for now, the chamber was silent again. The fire dimmed, and the spiral closed. Daniel breathed deeply, his eyes filled with determination. He knew this was only the beginning. The true test had yet to reveal itself. And as Zira looked at him with shaken pride, she realized a terrible truth. The fate of both their species might soon rest in the hands of the very human she had mocked. The chamber still glowed faintly from the dying embers. Daniel stood in the center of the spiral, his chest rising and falling with steady breaths. The flames that should have killed him had instead moved aside, as if recognizing something within him. High above, Zira's silver eyes followed his every step, her mind filled with disbelief. No alien had ever survived the trial of fire. And yet this human walked through it, as if the flames were only an illusion. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the sound of shifting stone. The floor beneath Daniel trembled, the spiral of embers fading into darkness. Then, with a grinding roar, the walls of the chamber began to move. Columns of stone slid apart, opening pathways that had been sealed for ages. A cold wind swept through the room, carrying with it whispers of voices that were not human, not alien, but something older. Zira pressed her hand against the railing of the broken stairway, her lips trembling. "This cannot be real," she muttered. "The fire should have destroyed you. It destroys everyone." But Daniel looked up at her, calm and steady. "Maybe the fire wasn't meant to destroy," he said. "Maybe it was meant to test who is willing to endure." His words cut through her like a blade. For generations, her people had treated the temple as a tomb of failure, a place to prove the weakness of those who entered. Yet here was a human, an outsider, who had faced it without fear and emerged untouched. Her pride ached, her certainty crumbled, and yet she could not look away. The mechanism roared again, louder this time, the stone floor splitting into several shifting platforms. Each one glowed with a faint light, forming a narrow path across a bottomless pit. Daniel stepped forward, studying the glowing stones. They shifted randomly, some rising, some sinking, as if daring him to move. The voice of the ancients echoed once more, booming across the chamber. "Courage without wisdom is ruin. Wisdom without courage is nothing." Daniel's heart pounded in his chest, but his mind remained sharp. He studied the rhythm of the shifting platforms, noticing patterns others might have missed. Step by step, he moved onto the first platform, the stone shaking under his boots. Zira gasped, leaning forward, her voice sharp with warning. "One wrong step and you fall into the abyss, human. No one can cross this bridge." But Daniel only glanced back at her, his eyes calm. "That I'll be the first," he said, his voice steady as stone. With that, he leapt to the next platform, landing just as the one behind him sank into the darkness. The pit glowed faintly with fire below, ready to swallow him whole if he failed. Yet he kept moving, each step precise, each movement guided by focus. Zira's chest tightened as she watched. Her people had tried this path, and all had failed, falling into the fire below. But this human moved differently, not with arrogance, not with fear, but with quiet determination. Every leap, every step was chosen with care. As if he trusted both his mind and the temple itself. Halfway across, the platforms began to shift faster, rising and falling with thunderous speed. The ground shook, dust fell from the ceiling, and the chamber groaned like a beast awakening. Daniel's pulse raced, but his focus sharpened. He calculated each movement, waiting for the right moment before jumping to the next platform. The abyss hissed below him, the flames waiting to claim him. But still, he pressed forward, step by step, refusing to stop. From above, Zahra's mocking pride had vanished completely. Her lips parted as she whispered to herself, "How does he do it? How does a human succeed where we failed?" She could not explain it, and for the first time, she felt something new. Not contempt, not superiority, but a quiet fear that perhaps her people had been wrong about the humans all along. Daniel neared the final stretch, the platforms now rising and falling like waves in a storm. One last leap stood between him and the far side of the chamber. The gap was wide, the pit blazing below with deadly fire. He inhaled deeply, his eyes narrowing. Then, without hesitation, he ran forward and leapt. For a heartbeat, it seemed he would fall, his body suspended over the flames. But then, the final platform rose beneath him, catching his boots as he landed. The chamber fell silent once more, the platforms freezing in place. The light of the pit dimmed, leaving only the sound of Daniel's steady breathing. Zahra's hands trembled as she gripped the railing, her silver eyes locked on him. He had done the impossible again. The human straightened, his gaze lifting to the far wall, where a new set of runes began to glow. They formed a great door, sealed for centuries, now opening with a deep rumble. Behind it, a faint blue light spilled into the chamber. Pure and unearthly, Daniel turned, looking up at Zahra, his voice calm but firm. "Mock me if you want," he said, "but remember this. Every step forward is proof that limits are only illusions." Zahra could not answer, her voice stolen by shock, her pride shattered. For the first time she bowed her head slightly, not out of respect, but out of uncertainty. And in that moment, she realized something she had never considered before. The ancients had not been waiting for her people. They had been waiting for someone else, someone like him. The door ahead opened wider, its blue light spilling into the ruins. The trial was not over, it had only begun, and as Daniel stepped forward into the glow, the alien girl followed silently, her arrogance replaced by an unease she could not name. She had once scoffed at him, mocked his attempts, but now her heart whispered a truth she was not ready to admit. This human was not ordinary, and his journey had only just begun. The great stone door groaned open, releasing a flood of cold blue light. The glow spread across the ruined walls, painting shadows that seemed alive. Daniel stepped through first, his boots echoing against the smooth floor beyond. Zahra followed, reluctantly, her silver eyes darting between the human and the mysterious chamber they had entered. Though she tried to hold her head high, a storm of doubt brewed in her chest. The new chamber was vast, larger than anything they had seen so far. Strange machines lined the walls, covered in dust but still humming with power. Tall pillars reached toward the ceiling, engraved with more of the glowing runes, and at the center stood a bridge of light suspended over an endless drop. It pulsed faintly, waiting, as if it was alive. Daniel studied it carefully, his eyes narrowing. "This is another test," he murmured, "not of fire, but of balance." Zahra frowned, crossing her arms tightly. "My people have tried this," she said coldly. "The bridge collapses under anyone who dares step upon it. None have crossed, not even our strongest." She wanted her voice to sound certain, but it cracked with the memory of countless failures. Daniel turned his gaze to her, calm as always. "Maybe strength is not what it requires," he said softly. "Maybe something else." His words struck her harder than she expected. for so long. Her people had believed brute force and pride would open the secrets of the ancients. But this human, fragile and small compared to her kind, spoke as if he already understood their error. Without waiting for her reply, Daniel stepped onto the HFY bridge. The light beneath his boots rippled like water. Yet it held firm. He took another step, and another, moving forward with steady confidence. Zira's breath caught in her throat, her pride demanding she laugh, but her heart refusing. Instead, she whispered, "Impossible," under her breath. Halfway across, the bridge began to flicker, its glow dimming dangerously. The abyss below roared with the sound of rushing wind, promising death if he fell. Daniel slowed, studying the rhythm of the flickers. He adjusted his pace, stepping only when the bridge pulsed with brighter light. The pattern revealed itself to him, a hidden rhythm in the chaos. Zira gripped the edge of the stone platform, her hands trembling. She had seen warriors, scholars, and leaders fall into that abyss. Yet here was a human, watching the light, trusting it, moving with it as if he belonged. For the first time, she felt something unfamiliar, admiration mixed with fear, the pride that once fueled her mocking. Words was cracking with every step he took. When Daniel finally reached the far side, the bridge blazed with light, sealing itself solid. The chamber shook as if acknowledging his success, and the pillars glowed brighter than ever before. The runes carved into them shifted, forming new patterns that stretched across the walls. From the symbols rose a great hologram, flickering into existence with ancient energy. It was the image of a figure, neither human nor alien, but something beyond both. Its voice thundered across the chamber, deeper than any echo they had heard before. Strength is nothing without wisdom. Wisdom is nothing without balance. The path belongs to the one who carries both. Daniel stood firm, his eyes reflecting the glow of the hologram. Zira, however, stumbled back, her pride finally breaking. Under the weight of the truth, her people had failed for generations, not because they lacked power, but because they lacked humility. Her silver eyes narrowed on Daniel. This simple human who carried no weapons, no armor, no pride, and yet, the temple had accepted him, had chosen him, where it had rejected her people countless times. The truth burned inside her chest, and for the first time in her life, she felt small. She wanted to scream, to deny it, to tell him it was only chance, only luck. But the chamber itself betrayed her thoughts. For the hologram turned its gaze only to him. Daniel spoke, his voice steady. "Why show me this? Why me and not them?" The hologram's answer rumbled like a storm. "Because you listen where others speak, you endure where others resist. The one who seeks without pride shall walk the path." Zira clenched her fists, her body trembling with rage and shame. Her pride had been her weapon, her shield, her entire identity. But now, in this chamber of the ancients, that pride was shattered into dust. She could not mock him anymore. She could not laugh at his attempts. For the human had succeeded again, and she had nothing left to say. The hologram faded, leaving only silence. Daniel turned slowly, his calm eyes meeting hers. "You thought me weak," he said softly, not unkindly. "But sometimes weakness is only the mask of a strength you do not understand." Zira lowered her gaze, unable to meet his eyes, her voice broken. "My people, we were wrong," she whispered, barely audible. The chamber pulsed once more, the floor beneath them shifting, revealing another passage forward. Its walls glowed with golden light, brighter than anything they had seen so far. Daniel stepped forward, his face set with determination. Behind him, Zira hesitated, her pride crushed but her curiosity stronger than ever. She followed him silently, her heart heavy, her mind torn apart. The alien girl who once mocked the human now walked behind him, her arrogance replaced with uncertainty, her pride replaced with silence. And though she did not admit it yet, deep inside, a spark of respect had begun to grow. The temple had broken her pride, and the human had proven her wrong. And for the First time, Zero realized that perhaps the fate of her people no longer rested with them, but with him, asterisk. The golden passage stretched ahead like a road into eternity. Its walls glowed softly, humming with ancient energy that seemed alive. Daniel walked at a steady pace, his eyes sharp, studying every symbol carved into the stone. Zero followed behind. Him in silence, her once proud posture now heavy with doubt. She had mocked him, she had laughed at him, but now her words felt hollow even to herself. The further they went, the brighter the glow became. It was as if the temple was guiding them, opening its secrets step by step. At last the passage widened into a grand hall, vast and breathtaking. The ceiling stretched high above, painted with scenes of the stars. The walls shimmered with murals of strange figures, neither human nor alien, beings of pure light and shadow. In the center of the hall stood a massive sphere, floating above the ground. Its surface shimmered with endless streams of glowing symbols, shifting and dancing like living fire. Daniel stopped, his heart racing as he gazed at the sphere. This is knowledge, he whispered, his voice filled with awe. Zero stepped forward slowly, her silver eyes widening. This is the heart of the temple, she said, her voice trembling. My people believed it was a weapon, a relic of destruction. But we never unlocked it. Daniel reached out, but before his fingers touched the sphere, the chamber shook violently. The sphere blazed with light, and the walls around them came alive. The murals moved, shifting like rivers of color, forming scenes that told a story. Zero gasped, covering her mouth. The story was clear. It was the history of the ancients. The murals showed them rising as great builders, masters of knowledge and power. They created wonders, machines that touched the stars, and temples like this one. But then, the colors darkened, showing wars, fire, and endless destruction. The ancients had turned their gifts against each other, consumed by pride and greed. Their empire had burned, and their people had fallen into ruin. Daniel's eyes narrowed as the final scene formed. The ancients, broken and dying, built the temple as their last act. The murals showed them sealing their knowledge, leaving behind trials to test those who might come after. The last image burned into the wall, a figure of light standing before the sphere, chosen by the temple. The words carved beneath it glowed. Only the humble seeker will inherit what we could not. Zera's knees weakened as she watched her, heart pounding. For her entire life, she had been told that her people were the rightful heirs of the ancients. They believed strength gave them that right. But here, in front of her, the truth was undeniable. The ancients had not been waiting for her people. They had been waiting for someone else. Daniel lowered his hand slowly, staring at the sphere with quiet determination. This is not a weapon, he said softly. This is a lesson. His voice echoed through the chamber, calm yet powerful. The sphere pulsed as if responding to his words, glowing brighter. The runes spun faster, filling the air with a deep hum. Suddenly, beams of light burst from the sphere, striking the floor around Daniel. They formed a circle, surrounding him in radiant glow. Zera gasped, her silver eyes wide with shock. The light rose higher, wrapping around Daniel like a crown. The sphere's voice thundered through the hall, ancient and commanding. You have walked the fire. You have crossed the path. You have broken the chain of pride. You are the chosen seeker, the bearer of what we leave behind. The words struck Zera harder than any blade. She stumbled back, her hands trembling. Her people had failed for generations, and now, the temple itself declared that a human, a species they saw as weak and unworthy, was chosen. Her pride shattered completely, replaced by a storm of fear and confusion. Daniel stood still as the light wrapped around him. Visions flashed in his mind, star maps, ancient knowledge, blueprints of machines that could change civilizations. He gasped as the flood of information poured into him, overwhelming but clear. This was not power meant for war, but knowledge meant for survival. The ancients had left behind the tools to rebuild, not to destroy. When the light faded, Daniel fell to one knee, breathing heavily. His eyes glowed faintly with the reflection of the runes. Zira stared at him, her lips trembling. What did it show you?" she whispered, her voice filled with fear and awe. Daniel lifted his head, his voice steady though soft. "It showed me the mistakes of the ancients and the hope they left behind." The chamber grew quiet, the sphere floating silently once. Again, Zira's mind raced, torn between rage and respect. She wanted to deny it, to call it a trick, but her heart knew the truth. The temple had chosen him, and her people's pride was nothing in comparison to the humility of one human. Daniel rose slowly, his body tired but his spirit unshaken. He turned to Zira, meeting her silver eyes with calm certainty. "You mocked me because you believed. Humans were weak," he said softly, "but weakness and strength are not what matter. Only the willingness to learn." Zira looked away, ashamed, her pride lying broken at her feet. The walls of the hall shifted again, opening another path deeper. Into the temple, the air carried a new hum, louder and stronger than before. Daniel stepped toward it, his face filled with determination. Zira hesitated, her thoughts heavy, but at last she followed. She had no pride left, no mockery left, only the desire to see where this path would lead. The heart of the temple had revealed its truth. The ancients had chosen the human, and Zira's world would never be the same. And as the glowing passage opened wider, both of them stepped forward, one humbled, one chosen, both walking into a destiny neither could yet understand. The golden passage trembled as Daniel and Zira stepped deeper inside. The glow around them grew brighter, humming with an energy that made the air heavy. Daniel walked with quiet confidence, his mind still echoing with the visions the sphere had shown him. Behind him, Zira followed in silence, her once proud steps slow and uncertain. Her heart was torn between fear of what this human had become and awe at what he had achieved. The passage ended in another chamber, vast and circular. Its walls were lined with ancient machines, tall as towers, their surfaces pulsing with strange lights. At the center stood a raised platform, and above it, a massive crystal suspended in the air, glowing like a captured star. As they entered, the crystal flared, filling the room with radiant light. The hum grew louder until it felt like the air itself was alive. Daniel stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the crystal. The temple's voice thundered once more, echoing through the chamber. "Power is the burden of the seeker. It shapes or it destroys. The choice is yours." The words struck Zira with fear, her chest tightening. Her people had always believed the temple was a weapon, and now, with the crystal blazing brighter, she feared that belief was true. The walls shimmered, and suddenly, more aliens appeared at the edge of the chamber. They had followed Zira, curious and restless, drawn by the light that shook the ruins. Their eyes widened as they saw Daniel standing at the heart of the chamber, bathed in the glow of the crystal. Whispers spread quickly among them, sharp and fearful. "How can this be?" One muttered, "A human cannot wield this." Another said, "This power belongs to us, not him." Zira clenched her fists, her pride warring with the truth she had seen. Her people would never accept this, not easily. Daniel looked around at them calmly, his face steady. "I do not want to rule you," he said firmly. "I do not want to take what is yours. I only seek to understand and to protect." His words echoed across the chamber, carrying a weight that silenced even the angriest whispers. But not all were convinced. A tall alien stepped forward, his voice sharp with anger. "You lie, human. You seek to control what you do not deserve. The temple belongs to us," he raised his weapon, aiming it at Daniel. The crystal above roared with sudden energy, releasing a shockwave that threw the alien to the floor. The chamber shook, the machines along the walls activating, their lights blazing with power. Zira's eyes widened, her heart racing. The temple was responding, not to her people, but to Daniel. It was protecting him, obeying him, and that truth was like a dagger in her chest. Her people had lost the power they believed was theirs, and it had shifted to him, a human. The others stared in silence, some trembling with fear, others glaring with hatred. Daniel stood tall, his voice steady though calm. "You see," he said, "the temple does not respond to pride or anger. It responds to something else, something your people forgot long ago." The crystal above pulsed as if confirming his words, filling the chamber with waves of light. Even those who doubted could not deny what they saw with their own eyes. Zira lowered her head, shame burning in her chest. Her entire life had been built on the belief that her people were chosen, that humans were nothing but weak intruders. But here, before her, the truth was undeniable. The shift of power had already begun, and it had chosen Daniel. Her pride was gone, replaced by something she had never felt before: respect and a quiet fear. The angry alien rose again, his voice trembling with rage. "If the temple follows him, then he is a danger. He must be destroyed." Others murmured in agreement, their fear twisting into hostility. Zira stepped forward suddenly, her voice sharp. "No," she said, surprising even herself. "You saw what I saw. The temple does not choose by blood. It chooses by worth. And it has chosen him." The crowd fell silent, their eyes wide with shock. Zira, who once mocked and laughed at the human, now stood in his defense. Her voice carried weight among her people, and though they hesitated, her words held them back. Daniel looked at her, his eyes soft but steady. "You do not have to defend me," he said quietly. But Zira shook her head, her voice low. "No, I do, because I was wrong about you." The crystal flared brighter, sending beams of light through the chamber. The runes on the walls shifted again, forming new symbols that glowed like fire. The temple's voice returned, deep and unyielding. "The seeker is not conqueror. The seeker is guardian. The choice is not his alone, but for all who follow." The words echoed until the very stone seemed to tremble. Daniel stepped closer to the crystal, his heart heavy. He could feel the weight of its power pressing against him. It was not a gift freely given, but a responsibility. He turned slowly, facing Zira and her people. "I will not use this to rule," he said. "I will not use this to destroy. I will use it only to protect, if you let me." The chamber grew silent, the glow softening. The shift of power had been made, not through violence or pride, but through humility and resolve. And though many of the aliens still trembled with anger, they could no longer deny what the temple itself had declared. Daniel, the human they mocked, now stood as the guardian chosen by the ancients, and Zira, her pride broken, found herself standing at his side, no longer as a mocker, but as something else, perhaps an ally, perhaps more, but most of all, as a witness to the truth. Asterisk. The crystal's glow filled the chamber, casting long shadows against the walls. The machines that lined the room hummed with ancient energy, their lights pulsing in rhythm with Daniel's heartbeat. He stood at the center of it all, the chosen seeker, while the aliens watched in silence, their pride broken and their fears rising. Zira stood beside him, her silver eyes fixed on the human she once mocked, her heart heavy with emotions she could not name. The temple's voice thundered again, echoing like a storm through the chamber. "The path is not complete. The seeker must bear the final truth." And with it, the weight of choice. The crystal flared brighter, releasing a beam of light that struck the floor in front of Daniel. The stone cracked open, and from the gap rose a pedestal carrying a small device, glowing faintly with shifting colors. It was ancient, delicate, and yet filled with unimaginable power. Daniel stepped forward slowly, his hand hovering above the device. Visions flickered in his mind, flashes of destruction, fire consuming worlds, empires falling into ash. But then came visions of hope, cities rebuilt, knowledge shared, species united instead of divided. His heart pounded. He understood now. This was the true purpose of the temple. The ancients had left behind not only their knowledge, but also the burden of choice. Zira's breath caught as she saw the device, Her people had always believed it was a weapon, a tool to dominate, but standing there, she realized the truth was far greater. It was not a weapon, it was a seed, something that could shape the future, either for survival or for destruction. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "What will you do, human?" Daniel did not answer at once. His hand hovered, his mind heavy with the weight of history pressing against him. He could feel the eyes of every alien in the chamber, waiting, fearing, hoping. He could feel Zira's gaze most of all, sharp yet uncertain. Her pride shattered, but her curiosity burning brighter than ever. He knew that whatever choice he made, it would not only define him, but the fate of both their species, the temples. Voice returned, softer now, almost like a whisper carried on the wind. The ancients fell because they chose pride over wisdom, anger over peace, power over balance. Will you repeat their failure, or will you break the chain? Daniel's chest tightened, his breath heavy. He closed his eyes for a moment, seeing again the visions of the ancients, their greatness turned to ashes by their arrogance. Then he opened them, his hand steady at last. He touched the device, and the chamber exploded with light. The machines roared to life, the runes along the walls blazing like fire. The crystal above shook, sending beams of energy across the hall. The aliens cried out in fear, shielding their eyes while Zira stood frozen, unable to look away. Daniel's body glowed faintly, his silhouette surrounded by radiant energy. The visions came again, but stronger this time. He saw both paths laid before him, destruction or survival, domination or unity. The device pulsed, as if waiting for his will to shape it. And Daniel, his voice firm, spoke into the storm of light. "I will not repeat your mistakes. I will not use this to rule. I will use this to protect." The light shifted instantly, turning from violent red to calm blue. The roaring chamber fell silent, the machines slowing until they hummed softly. The crystal dimmed, glowing with a steady, peaceful light. The device in Daniel's hand cooled, its glow soft but alive. The temple's voice echoed one final time. "The seeker has chosen, the path is set, the burden is his, but the future is for all." When the glow faded, Daniel fell to one knee, exhausted but alive. The device rested in his hand, no longer threatening, but warm like a living heart. The aliens stared in stunned silence, their jaws tight, their pride shattered, and Zira, she could not move, could not breathe. Her silver eyes were locked on the human, the one she once mocked, the one she called weak. He had passed every trial, unlocked the secrets of the temple, and chosen mercy over power. Her heart pounded, her thoughts in chaos. She had believed humans were nothing, fragile creatures unworthy of such places, and yet, in front of her, the temple itself had bent to his will. Her jaw tightened, her lips parted, but no words came. Daniel slowly rose, his eyes calm, his grip on the device firm, but not greedy. He turned to Zira, his voice quiet but steady. This was never about who was stronger, it was about who could learn. Zira's chest tightened, her pride gone, her arrogance broken. For the first time she bowed her head, her voice trembling. "You are not what I thought you were." The other aliens whispered among themselves, their fear now mixed with awe. Some still glared at Daniel with anger, but many lowered their heads in silence. The truth was undeniable. The temple had chosen him. The human who once stumbled like a stranger had now walked as the bearer of the ancients' will. The shift of power was complete. Daniel looked up at the glowing crystal one last time. The temple was silent now, its trials finished, its secrets passed on. He knew the burden would remain with him forever. But as he turned toward Zira and the others, he smiled faintly. "I did not come here to take from you," he said. "I came here to walk with you." Zira's silver eyes shimmered, her jaw still slack with shock. For the first time, she understood the truth. The human she once mocked had become the bridge between her people and the past they had lost. Her pride was gone, her laughter silenced, replaced by something she had never imagined. Respect, awe, and perhaps something more. The chamber grew quiet, the light dimming into peace. The human and the alien girl stood side by side, no longer enemies, no longer strangers. And though the future was uncertain, one truth had already been written. The jaw-dropping truth was this: the fate of two species now rested in the hands of the human she had once laughed at, and the world would never be the same again. Asterisk.